Commander Ryan Mitchell stood on the bridge of the HSS Mercy, watching another convoy of refugee ships approach their station. The massive rescue vessel floated in deep space between three war-torn star systems. Its hull stretched for miles and housed over 50,000 beings from 12 different species. All of them had one thing in common. They were running from something terrible. Dr. Amy Carter worked in the medical bay treating victims from the latest attack on Talos 4. Reptilian Sauroch government called it population control, but Amy knew better. She had seen the burn marks on children and the fear in their parents' eyes. The Sauroch were killing anyone who was not like them. They started with the weak and sick, but now they hunted anyone different. The Galactic Assembly knew what was happening. Amy had sent them reports with pictures and medical evidence. The response was always the same. They could not interfere with internal affairs of member worlds. The Assembly had rules about sovereignty and non-interference. Those rules meant nothing to dying children, but everything to politicians. Engineer Tony Lopez checked the life support systems for the 10th time that day. The station was built to house 15,000 people, but now held more than 3 times that number. The air recyclers worked overtime and the water systems strained under the load. Every day brought more refugees, and every day Tony wondered if the station would hold together. The humans never turned anyone away. It was not in their nature. When other species saw suffering, they looked for reasons why it was not their problem. When humans saw suffering, they looked for ways to help. The galaxy called them deathworlders because they came from a harsh planet, but they were the gentlest beings in known. Space President Helen Davis sat in her office on Earth reading reports from across human territory. 43 humanitarian crises were happening right now. Human ships and stations provided aid while everyone else watched. The cost was enormous. Earth's economy struggled under the weight of feeding and housing millions of refugees, but no human suggested stopping. The Confederation of Merchant Worlds sent another message demanding humans stop interfering with natural selection. They believed strong species should rule and weak ones should serve or die. Human compassion disrupted this natural order by keeping the weak alive. The merchants made money selling weapons to the strong and slaves from the weak. Human rescue missions hurt their business. Ryan received the priority message while watching another medical transport dock with his station. The transport carried survivors from a Sauroch purification camp. Most were children who had watched their parents die. The message was from Merchant World Command. They ordered all human vessels to leave the sector immediately or face consequences. Amy looked up from treating a small alien child with severe burns. The little one had green skin and large eyes that held too much pain for someone so young. Its species was dying out because they were peaceful and could not fight back against the Sauroch. Amy wondered how many more would die while the Assembly debated rules and procedures. The attack came without warning. 3 Merchant World warships dropped out of hyperspace and opened fire on the refugee convoy Ryan was escorting. The convoy had no weapons and flew ships held together with hope and spare parts. Ryan ordered his escort vessels to protect the refugees, but the merchant ships ignored his warnings. The HSS Healing Light took a direct hit to its medical bay. The hospital ship broke apart in a flash of light, taking 300 human doctors and nurses with it. The HSS Comfort tried to shield a transport full of children, but particle beams cut through its hull like paper. 2,000 refugees died in seconds along with the human crew trying to save them. Ryan watched helplessly as the slaughter continued. His escort ships were rescue vessels with light weapons meant for defending against pirates. The merchant warships were built for killing, and they did their job well. When the attack ended, 3,000 humans were dead along with 8,000 refugees they died trying to protect. The Galactic Assembly met in emergency session after news of the massacre spread. President Davis expected swift justice for the unprovoked attack on medical vessels and civilian refugees. Instead, she got bureaucracy and blame. The Assembly censured humanity for operating in disputed space and provoking the merchants. No punishment fell on the attackers. Ambassador voting records showed the truth. Species that traded with the merchants voted to blame humans. Species that feared merchant expansion abstained from voting. Only the few weak races that relied on human protection voted for justice. The Assembly cared more about trade profits than dead children. Tony worked through the night installing new life support systems for incoming survivors. The merchant attack had destroyed 2 refugee processing ships, leaving thousands more people with nowhere to go. The station was already overcrowded, but Tony would make room somehow. Humans always made room. Amy treated survivors in the medical bay while tears ran down her face. A HFY mother held her dying son and sang to him in a language Amy did not understand. The boy had been on the HSS Comfort when it exploded. Shrapnel had torn through his small body, but he lived long enough to see his mother one last time. Ryan stood before the memorial wall in the station's main corridor. Names of dead humans covered the wall from floor to ceiling. They had died in rescue missions and humanitarian operations across the galaxy. They died protecting people they had never met from dangers they did not create. The wall grew longer every month. The final insult came 3 days later. The Merchant Confederation demanded compensation for damage to their ships during the attack. They claimed human escort vessels had fired first and damaged merchant hull plating. The Assembly agreed to investigate and froze human aid shipments until the matter was resolved. President Davis closed the report and looked out her window at Earth's blue oceans. Humanity had spent 3 centuries trying to make the galaxy a better place. They shared their technology and medicine freely. They protected the weak and fed the hungry. They asked for nothing in return except the chance to help. The galaxy had answered their kindness with cruelty. It had met their generosity with greed. Every act of human compassion was seen as weakness to exploit. Every human life lost was acceptable collateral damage in someone else's war for power. Helen Davis made a decision that would change everything. She activated her secure communication system and sent a message to Admiral Jack Powell on Mars. The message contained only 3 words, but they carried the weight of centuries of patience finally exhausted. Protocol 7 now. Intelligence Officer Kelly Barnes sat in her darkened office staring at screens full of data. The attack on the refugee convoy was not random violence. It was part of something bigger and more frightening. Kelly had spent weeks connecting dots that painted a picture no one wanted to see. The galaxy was turning against humanity in a coordinated way. 17 separate incidents in the past month all followed the same pattern. Human relief operations would arrive to help disaster victims or refugees. Local military forces would demand the humans leave. When humans refused to abandon innocent people, the attacks would come. The attackers always claimed self-defense, and the Galactic Assembly always believed them. Governor Sam Johnson received the ultimatum while reviewing defensive positions around New Texas colony. The Sorok hegemony massed battle fleets on his borders and demanded he surrender all refugees on his world. The Reptilian Empire claimed the refugees were genetic criminals who corrupted pure bloodlines. Sam had 48 hours to comply or face invasion. The refugees on New Texas were mostly families with children. They had fled Sorok purification campaigns and found safety under human protection. Sam looked at intelligence reports showing mass graves on worlds that surrendered their refugee populations. He sent his response to the hegemony. New Texas would not abandon the innocent, no matter the cost. Captain Lisa Wright commanded the hospital ship HSS Haven when pirates attacked her medical convoy near the neutral zone. The pirates flew ships with merchant world markings and used military-grade weapons. They demanded Wright surrender her patients for processing, but she refused. Her defensive action saved 15,000 lives, but violated Assembly rules about proportional response. The Galactic Assembly threatened Wright with war crimes charges for using excessive force against the pirates. The same Assembly did nothing when the pirates received medals from merchant world governments for their successful raid. Wright realized the system was designed to punish humans for protecting others, while rewarding those who preyed on the weak. Dr. Amy Carter made a disturbing discovery while treating refugees from multiple Sorok attacks. The victims were not random populations, but specific groups with valuable genetic traits or technical knowledge. The Sorok were systematically eliminating species that possessed useful abilities or strategic information. They used human compassion to gather targets in one place. The energy beings of Arcturus declared human space a contamination zone because biological diversity threatened their pure energy existence. The Crystalline Collective began seizing human mining stations, claiming humans corrupted planetary ecosystems with their refugee settlements. Each excuse sounded different, but the goal was always the same: remove human influence from the galaxy. Kelly Barnes compiled evidence of the growing conspiracy. 47 species had formed what they called the Purity Alliance, dedicated to eliminating deathworlder contamination of galactic order. They viewed human kindness as a virus that weakened proper dominance hierarchies. Strong species should rule and weak ones should serve or die. Humans disrupted this natural order. President Helen Davis convened the Human Defense Council as reports flooded in from across human space. The hegemony had invaded 3 more colonies demanding refugee surrenders. The Merchant Confederation blockaded human trade routes. Energy beings raided human research stations. Crystal entities seized mining operations. The attacks came from all directions at once. The alliance strategy was simple and effective. They would make helping others so costly that humans would eventually stop trying. Every act of kindness would be met with violence. Every rescue mission would trigger retaliation. Eventually, human compassion would break under the weight of constant punishment. The galaxy would return to its natural state where might made right. Governor Johnson watched hegemony landing craft descend toward New Texas. His planetary defense force was outnumbered 10-1, but they would fight anyway. The humans had given their word to protect the refugees, and humans always kept their word. The first explosions lit up the night sky as defensive batteries engaged the invasion fleet. The battle for New Texas lasted 6 hours. Human defenders fought with desperate courage while refugees huddled in underground shelters. Johnson's forces destroyed twice their number in enemy ships, but the outcome was inevitable. When the ammunition ran out, the hegemony forces landed and began their work. Amy received survivors from the New Texas evacuation in her medical bay. Most were humans who had sacrificed everything to save alien refugees. They spoke of watching Sorok soldiers execute families who could not run fast enough. They described seeing children torn from their parents and loaded onto processing ships. The lucky ones died quickly. The Galactic Assembly met to discuss the New Texas situation, while hegemony forces completed their purification of the world. Assembly members expressed concern about the humanitarian crisis but took no action. They passed a resolution calling for restraint on all sides. The resolution meant nothing to the dead, but let politicians claim they had responded to the crisis. Ryan Mitchell received new orders while organizing another rescue mission. Human Command ordered all humanitarian operations suspended pending review of Assembly regulations. The galaxy had successfully used its own laws to prevent humans from helping anyone. The trap was complete and perfectly legal under galactic law. Tony Lopez worked around the clock installing additional life support systems for refugees still arriving at the station. The official suspension of rescue operations did nothing to stop the flow of desperate people seeking human protection. They came in broken ships and crowded transports, knowing humans would not turn them away even when ordered to do so. Kelly Barnes presented her final intelligence report to the Human Defense Council. The Purity Alliance had achieved its first objective. Human rescue operations were now illegal under Assembly law. Phase 2 would be the systematic elimination of existing refugee populations under human protection. Phase 3 would be direct attacks on human worlds to remove deathworlder influence forever. The evidence was overwhelming, but the conclusion was unthinkable. The galaxy had decided that human compassion was too dangerous to tolerate. Billions of beings would suffer and die to preserve systems where the strong dominated the weak. The Assembly would enforce this suffering in the name of law and order. Admiral Jack Powell received President Davis's message while reviewing classified files in his underground command center on Mars. Protocol 7 had been planned for decades, but no one believed it would ever be necessary. Humanity had hoped their example would inspire others to choose kindness over cruelty. They had been tragically wrong. The files contained detailed intelligence on every species in the galaxy. 3 centuries of humanitarian missions had provided perfect cover for gathering information about alien biology, psychology, and technology. Every act of kindness had also been an act of reconnaissance. Every rescued refugee had shared knowledge about their oppressors. Every medical treatment had revealed biological vulnerabilities. Powell activated the protocol with a heavy heart. Hidden bases across human space began powering up weapon systems that had remained dormant for generations. Sleeper agents embedded in alien governments received activation codes. Ships disguised as civilian transports revealed their true military nature. The galaxy was about to learn what deathworlders really were when they stopped being kind. Administrator Matt Turner watched through his office window as hegemony assault ships descended through the atmosphere toward Kepler Colony. The Reptilian Empire had given him 12 hours to surrender all non-Sorok residents for processing. Matt had used those 12 hours to evacuate as many humans as possible, but 40,000 alien refugees remained behind. The Sorok wanted them alive for their purification experiments. The landing craft touched down in the colony's main square and began disgorging soldiers in environmental suits. The Sorok carried weapons designed to incapacitate rather than kill. They needed live subjects for their biological research programs. Matt watched helplessly as the soldiers began rounding up refugees and loading them into transport. Containers Commander Ryan Mitchell led a rescue fleet toward the besieged world of Haven's Hope, where 200,000 refugees sheltered under human protection. The Purity Alliance had surrounded the system with warships and demanded the refugees be returned to their homeworlds for proper processing. Everyone knew processing meant death, but the Alliance maintained the fiction of legal procedures. The Alliance ultimatum was simple: surrender the refugees or watch the entire system burn. Mitchell had orders from Human Command to avoid engagement and withdraw if threatened. Those orders felt like poison in his mouth as he watched Alliance ships position themselves around inhabited worlds. The aliens were using human compassion as a weapon against humanity itself. Admiral Jack Powell stood in the war room beneath Mars reviewing tactical displays that showed the true scope of the crisis. 63 human colonies were under direct threat from Alliance forces. Hundreds of refugee camps and aid stations faced imminent attack. The galaxy had coordinated its assault perfectly to overwhelm human defensive capabilities. The Admiral studied classified reports that revealed humanity's hidden preparations. Every human world contained concealed military installations disguised as civilian infrastructure. Every humanitarian mission had doubled as intelligence-gathering operations. Every act of kindness had mapped enemy weaknesses and capabilities. The galaxy thought it knew humanity, but it had only seen what humans chose to show. Dr. Amy Carter analyzed Alliance communication intercepts in her new role as head of the Xenological Warfare Division. The intercepted messages revealed the truth behind the coordinated attacks. The Alliance was not motivated by territory or resources, but by ideology. They believed human compassion encouraged
weakness in other species and prevented natural
dominance hierarchies from forming. The Purity Alliance saw humanity as a virus that infected the galaxy with dangerous ideas about equality and cooperation. Strong species were meant to rule over weak ones, but humans kept interfering with natural selection. The Alliance had decided to eliminate human influence permanently to restore proper galactic order where might made right. The breaking point came when Alliance forces launched simultaneous attacks on 12 human colonies, including the agricultural world of New Eden. The world housed 3 million human civilians and 5 million refugees from across the galaxy. Alliance propaganda claimed the refugees were genetic weapons designed to contaminate pure bloodlines. Governor Lisa Hayes watched from her command bunker as Alliance ships bombarded refugee settlements from orbit. The attacks used bioweapons designed to target specific species while leaving human populations alive to witness the slaughter. The message was clear: humanity could watch their friends die or join them in death. Matt Turner's final transmission from Kepler Colony showed Sorok soldiers herding alien children into processing ships while their parents screamed helplessly. The children were tagged with identification numbers and sorted by species for different experimental programs. Turner's broadcast ended when Sorok forces stormed his command center. The Galactic Assembly met in emergency session while the attacks continued across human space. Assembly members expressed deep concern about the escalating violence, but refused to condemn the Alliance actions. They passed another resolution calling for restraint from all parties while Alliance ships continued their systematic extermination of refugee populations. President Helen Davis received casualty. Reports in her secure bunker beneath Geneva. 100,000 civilians had died in the first wave of attacks, with millions more facing immediate danger. The Alliance had successfully turned human compassion into a liability by threatening everyone humans tried to protect. Ryan Mitchell made his decision while watching Alliance ships destroy refugee transports trying to escape Haven's Hope. His orders were to withdraw and avoid engagement, but those orders condemned 200,000 innocent beings to death. Mitchell activated his ship's combat systems and ordered his fleet to attack. The battle lasted 3 hours and ended with Mitchell's fleet scattered and burning. The Alliance ships were newer and more heavily armed than the disguised human rescue vessels. Mitchell managed to save 50,000 refugees but lost most of his ships and crews in the process. The Alliance broadcast his defeat across the galaxy as proof that human military power was insufficient to challenge their authority. Admiral Powell reviewed damage reports while preparing humanity's response. The Alliance had successfully provoked several human commanders into breaking their orders and engaging in combat. The defeats would be used to justify even more aggressive actions against human interests. The trap was closing perfectly. Amy Carter decoded the final Alliance transmission that revealed their ultimate plan. Phase 1 had eliminated most refugee populations under human protection. Phase 2 would target human colonies that refused to abandon their humanitarian principles. Phase 3 would be direct assault on Earth itself to remove the source of deathworlder contamination forever. The transmission included detailed plans for biological weapons designed specifically to target human physiology. The Alliance had spent decades studying human medical data shared during humanitarian missions. They intended to use humanity's own generosity against them in the most literal sense possible. President Davis addressed the Human Defense Council in a speech that would echo through galactic history. Her words were measured but carried the weight of 3 centuries of patience finally exhausted. She spoke of humanity's attempts to build a better galaxy through kindness and cooperation. She listed the species they had saved and the worlds they had protected. She counted the human lives lost in service to others. Then she spoke of the galaxy's response to human generosity, the exploitation of human goodwill, the perversion of human medical knowledge into weapons, the systematic slaughter of beings who trusted human protection. The Alliance had made their position clear. There was no place in their galaxy for compassion or mercy. Davis concluded with words that would be remembered long after the current crisis ended. Humanity had tried to lead by example, but the galaxy preferred to follow its baser instincts. Humans had offered partnership, but aliens demanded dominance. The deathworlders had shown their gentle side for 3 centuries. Now the galaxy would learn why they were called deathworlders in the first place. Admiral Powell received his final orders while watching Alliance ships mass for the assault on Earth. The orders were simple and devastating. All human military assets were to be activated immediately. 3 centuries of hidden preparations were to be revealed. The galaxy wanted to see what humans became when they stopped being kind. They were about to find out. Powell activated the command sequence that would change galactic civilization forever. Across human space, hidden weapon systems powered up for the first time in centuries. Sleeper agents revealed their true identities. Civilian ships dropped their disguises. The galaxy had pushed humanity past its breaking point. Now they would learn the difference between choosing peace and being capable of war. Captain Lisa Wright stood on the bridge of her new command ship, watching the merchant world capital burn in the distance. The HSS Retribution was not a hospital ship disguised as a warship, but a true predator designed for hunting. Wright's target was the orbital defense grid that protected the world where the refugee convoy massacre had been planned and celebrated. The attack lasted 17 minutes from start to finish. Wright's fleet appeared from hyperspace in perfect formation and systematically destroyed every military installation in the system. The merchant world navy scrambled to respond but found their ships unable to lock onto human vessels that seemed to flicker in and out of existence. The secret was technology. Humanity had developed centuries ago but never used. Human ships could phase partially out of normal space, making them nearly impossible to target while allowing them to fire at will. The galaxy had seen human rescue ships but never human warships. The difference was terrifying. Commander Ryan Mitchell led Operation Sanctuary from his new flagship, while coordinating the systematic liberation of every slave world and refugee camp in Alliance space. The operation used intelligence gathered during decades of humanitarian missions when humans had mapped every enemy installation while pretending to deliver medical supplies. Mitchell's forces appeared where the Alliance least expected them and vanished before retaliation was possible. On Zarian Prime, the Sorok occupation force woke to find their orbital stations simply gone. No debris field marked their destruction. No distress signals revealed their fate. The space where death ships had floated the night before was empty. Dr. Amy Carter worked in her new laboratory developing weapons that would incapacitate rather than kill Alliance forces. 3 centuries of treating alien patients had taught humans exactly how each species' biology functioned. Amy's weapons disrupted Sorok heat regulation systems, causing them to collapse helplessly. Crystalline beings found their energy matrices scattered. Energy entities lost cohesion and reverted to base particles. The Alliance response was swift but ineffective. They launched massive fleets to destroy human colonies, only to discover that every peaceful farming world contained hidden military installations. What they had thought were civilian settlements revealed themselves as fortress worlds defended by veterans who had chosen exile over war. Governor Sam Johnson's colony on New Texas became the forward base for liberating hegemony slave worlds. The refugees that Alliance forces had tried to eliminate provided detailed intelligence about their former captors' weaknesses. Every act of Alliance cruelty became the foundation for their own downfall. The liberated beings did not remain passive victims waiting for human rescue. On 17 different worlds, simultaneous uprisings began as former slaves used human-supplied weapons and tactics to overthrow their oppressors. The Cathai demonstrated that their gentle nature concealed fierce determination when their children were threatened. Admiral Jack Powell revealed humanity's greatest secret from his command center on Mars. Humans had never stopped being warriors. They had simply chosen to fight for others rather than themselves. Every human child learned combat alongside compassion. Every doctor trained as a soldier. Every teacher studied strategy and tactics. The galaxy had mistaken human choice for human nature. They believed deathworlders were gentle because they came from a harsh world when the truth was exactly opposite. Humans were gentle despite coming from a world that had taught them to be killers. When they chose to stop being gentle, the galaxy discovered what 3 centuries of suppressed instincts looked like when finally unleashed Alliance. Leadership realized their error when their home systems began falling faster than they could respond. The humans did not fight like other species with massive fleets and conventional tactics. They fought like apex predators using speed, stealth, and precision to eliminate threats before enemies knew they were under attack. The Crystalline Collective discovered their homeworld surrounded by human ships that had somehow penetrated the most secure star system in their territory. The energy beings of Arcturus found their dimensional barriers breached by technology they had thought impossible. The Merchant Confederation watched their trade networks collapse as human raiders struck supply lines with perfect coordination. Wright's fleet moved through Alliance space like a plague of destruction, targeting military assets while carefully avoiding civilian populations. The humans were not interested in conquest or revenge, but in eliminating the Alliance's ability to threaten innocent beings. They fought with surgical precision that left enemy civilians unharmed while destroying their government's capacity for war. The Alliance attempted to negotiate when they realized the scope of human capabilities, but found humans unwilling to discuss terms. Admiral Powell's response to surrender offers was broadcast across the galaxy in a message that redefined human-alien relations forever. Powell spoke calmly, but his words carried the weight of centuries of accumulated anger. Humanity had spent 300 years trying to build a better galaxy through cooperation and mutual aid. They had shared their technology freely and asked nothing in return except the chance to help those who suffered. The Alliance had answered human generosity with systematic cruelty. The Alliance claimed they wanted to restore natural order, where strong species dominated weak ones. Powell noted that humans were apparently stronger than anyone had realized. If the Alliance truly believed in rule by the strong, then they should accept human dominance gracefully. The galaxy had wanted to see what deathworlders looked like when they stopped being kind. Now they knew. Mitchell coordinated liberation operations across 47 star systems while Alliance governments collapsed under the weight of human assault. The refugees that Alliance propaganda had painted as genetic weapons proved to be the key to victory. Their knowledge of enemy weaknesses and their determination to prevent others from suffering their fate made them ideal allies. Amy Carter's research revealed the full scope of Alliance planning. They had intended to use biological weapons derived from human medical data to eliminate deathworlder contamination permanently. The irony was complete when human knowledge of alien biology proved far more devastating when turned to military purposes. The tide turned decisively when Alliance member species began surrendering, individually rather than face human wrath. The energy beings of Arcturus were the first to break, sending a formal apology and offering reparations for their attacks on human research stations. The Crystalline Collective followed within hours, promising to return all seized mining operations. The Sorok hegemony held out longest, believing their purification ideology made them superior to deathworlder brutality. Their resistance ended when human forces liberated their slave breeding facilities and broadcast evidence of their crimes across the galaxy. The footage of children in experimental laboratories destroyed any remaining sympathy for Alliance goals. President Helen Davis addressed the reformed Galactic Assembly from her office on Earth while human fleets maintained order throughout former Alliance space. Her speech was brief and to the point. Humanity had tried asking permission to protect the innocent and been refused. They had tried working within existing systems and been betrayed. Now they would create new systems that prioritized justice over law. The age of permitted atrocity was ending. The age of enforced compassion was beginning. Any species that chose to prey on others would face human intervention until they learned better ways. The galaxy could adapt to human values or face human weapons. The choice was theirs, but the outcome was no longer in doubt. Davis concluded with words that would be carved into monuments across liberated worlds. The deathworlders had shown the galaxy their kindness for 3 centuries. When kindness failed, they showed their strength. There would be no third demonstration. Judge Margaret Stone presided over the War Crimes Tribunal from the bench of Unity Station built from the wreckage of the old Galactic Assembly headquarters. The former Alliance leadership sat in detention cells watching evidence of their crimes play on screens throughout the courtroom. The footage came from human intelligence files compiled during 3 centuries of humanitarian missions. The evidence was overwhelming and undeniable. Human investigators had documented over 100,000 instances of systematic oppression that the old assembly had ignored or approved. They cataloged the extinction of 847 species due to non-interference policies. They recorded the deaths of 50 billion sentient beings who died because the galaxy chose order over Justice. Admiral Lisa Wright commanded the integration fleet that helped liberated worlds transition to self-governance. The former merchant world capital now served as a rehabilitation center, where former supremacists learned to coexist with the species they had previously enslaved. Wright ensured the process was thorough but not cruel. Humans had not fought for revenge but for justice. The Sorok homeworld underwent complete reconstruction under joint human refugee supervision. The reptilian species that had once devoted itself to genetic purity now worked alongside the beings they had tried to eliminate. Former purification facilities became schools, where Sorok children learned about diversity and cooperation instead of dominance and hatred. Commander Ryan Mitchell established the Refugee Integration Corps to help displaced populations build new homes on worlds voluntarily donated by Reformed Alliance members. The former victims became architects of a more just galactic society. Their suffering was transformed into wisdom that would prevent future atrocities. The Kethai emerged as humanity's closest allies during the Reconstruction period. Their natural engineering skills complemented human strategic thinking perfectly. Together they designed new cities and space stations that could house multiple species comfortably. The gentle insectoids had learned that sometimes kindness required strength to protect it. President Helen Davis won re-election for an unprecedented 4th term as humanity guided the transformation of galactic civilization. The new Confederation of Free Worlds operated under human-drafted laws that prioritized protection of the vulnerable over privileges of the powerful. Every member species contributed to collective defense, with humanity providing strategic coordination. The Galactic Council that replaced the corrupt assembly was composed equally of rescuers and rescued. Former refugee populations held voting power equal to their former oppressors. This ensured that decisions were made with the welfare of all beings in mind, rather than just the strongest or wealthiest species. Dr. Amy Carter published her final research report after retiring from active service. The document revealed the full scope of humanity's patience during the dark years. They had tried diplomatic solutions for 3 centuries while documenting every atrocity. They had offered friendship and received betrayal. They had shared knowledge and received biological weapons designed to kill them. The report became required reading in schools across the new Confederation. Children from dozens of species learned how the old galaxy had operated and why it had failed. They studied the difference between peace and justice. They learned that tolerance of evil was not virtue but cowardice. They understood that sometimes good beings must fight to protect others who cannot protect themselves. Carter's most important discovery was that the Alliance's ideology remained appealing to certain personality types across all species. The desire to dominate others was not limited to any particular race or culture. but was a fundamental flaw in how some individuals viewed the universe. Constant vigilance was required to prevent such thinking from taking root again. The memorial gardens on Luna became a pilgrimage site for beings from across the galaxy. The names of every human who died while the galaxy was still asking permission to save lives were carved into black stone walls. President Davis spoke there often to children from liberated worlds. Davis would tell them that humans were called deathworlders because Earth had tested them every day, and they had thrived anyway. The galaxy thought surviving a harsh world made humans dangerous, but that was wrong. What made humans dangerous was deciding that survival was not enough. They had to ensure others could survive and thrive as well. The transformation was not complete or perfect. Some Alliance remnants continued guerrilla operations against the New Order. Certain species struggled to abandon supremacist ideologies that had defined their cultures for millennia. Progress was slow and sometimes violent, but it was genuine progress toward a more just galaxy. Human peacekeepers maintained order while former victim species built new civilizations. The peacekeepers were not occupying armies but protective forces that ensured the strong could never again prey upon the weak. Their presence was temporary, but their example was permanent. The A. Crystalline Collective volunteered to serve as the new galaxy's memory bank, storing detailed records of Alliance, crimes, and human liberation efforts. The energy beings of Arcturus became teachers, helping other species understand complex scientific concepts. Even former enemies found new roles in the reconstructed civilization. Mitchell retired from military service to become head of the Galactic Refugee Agency. His mission was to ensure that no being would ever again suffer simply for being different or weak. The agency maintained rapid response fleets that could intervene anywhere in Confederation space within hours of a distress call. The children who grew up in the new galaxy learned different stories than their parents had. They heard tales of cooperation instead of conquest. They studied heroes who saved others rather than warriors who dominated them. They learned that true strength came from protecting the innocent rather than exploiting the vulnerable. Trade between worlds flourished under the new system because all species benefited from exchanges rather than just the powerful. Technology advanced rapidly as former enemies shared knowledge freely. Art and culture blossomed as diversity was celebrated instead of feared. The galaxy became what humanity had always believed it could be. Wright established the Peacekeeping Academy on Mars, where beings from across the Confederation trained to become protectors of the innocent. The Academy taught that violence was sometimes necessary but never glorious. Students learned to fight not for conquest but for defense. They studied human tactical methods, but more importantly, they absorbed human values. The final entry in humanity's historical records from this period was written by President Davis herself. She noted that the galaxy had presented humanity with a choice between abandoning their principles or enforcing them. They had chosen enforcement, and the galaxy was better for it. Davis wrote that every species still told stories about the day deathworlders decided to stop being kind. Those stories were cautionary tales about what happened when evil was allowed to flourish unchecked. They were also hopeful stories about how even the darkest times could lead to better futures, if good beings were willing to fight for justice. The deathworlders had offered friendship first. The galaxy should have accepted it. When friendship was rejected, they offered protection. When protection was spurned, they offered justice. There would be no fourth offer. The galaxy had learned to accept human values not because humans were perfect, but because the alternatives were unacceptable. In archives across 1,000 worlds, the same lesson was recorded for future generations. Humanity's greatest strength was never their technology or tactics, but their choice to use superior capabilities in service of others rather than themselves. When that choice was no longer respected, they ensured it would never again be threatened. The age of artificial peace built on the suffering of the weak had ended forever. The age of enforced justice backed by the unlimited determination of Earth's children had begun. The galaxy was learning that some things were worth fighting for, and some fights were worth winning regardless of the cost.